you know what's about to go down. It is my favorite holiday launch of the year, my favorite makeup launch of the year, really, because these powders will be used by me all year round. They're my all-time favorite powders for the face. The Hourglass Holiday 2025 Ambient Lighting Edit Unlocked palettes have arrived at my doorstep. I paid overnight shipping from the website to get all three that are available sent to me. So ladies and gentlemen, today I have swatches of all three of the palettes. I will also be swatching and comparing each of these to last year's three palettes, because I think last year was probably the most popular year of these palettes, so I know a lot of you guys might have these. So we'll do direct swatch comparisons today, and then a demo of all three palettes on my light neutral skin tone, so you can decide which one is best for you. Oh my gosh, as Britt Clark says, this is also my Super Bowl, and I'm excited to get into these. Now, quick details about these palettes. They are all available right now, three of them, on the Hourglass website. There is, however, a fourth palette, the Horse palette, which is a Sephora exclusive. So you can only get that color story at Sephora. It will be available on the app September 5th. To note, the shades in the Horse palette, they are all existing shades. There are no new exclusive shades in this palette, so that makes me feel a little bit better. But some more good news. The Horse artwork is a customization option on the Hourglass website. We just can't get the Horse color story on the Hourglass website. So the color story is exclusive to Sephora, but the artwork is not. So the good news is, again, for the third year in a row, you can customize which artwork you want for what color story. Now, I, of course, ordered the pre-curated color stories that match the art they originally came in, but for you guys, if you go to the Hourglass website, click on custom palettes, and it will give you the option to pick your artwork, including the Horse artwork, with the three pre-curated color stories. You cannot pick which individual colors you want. Would love for that to happen one day, but as of this time, there are three curated color stories, and I have the curated palettes, so no confusion here or there. These palettes are $4 more than they were last year at $94. They are continuing to rise for $5 every single year. Lovely. But for me, as a fan of these, as somebody who truly gets use out of these powders, who considers them to be filters for the face, if you buy any of these colors individually, the price is crazy. So this is the best value, where you can get all of the formulas, multiple shades, for under $100, which is still crazy. I know that. But individually, the price is even crazier and the value is way less. So that's why if you want to experience Hourglass powders for the first time, these Ambient Edit Unlock palettes are the best value, the best bang for your buck, the best way to try multiple colors and formulations. And I'm just here to narrow down which one is the best for you. In terms of selling out and limited edition, guess what? These are palettes that actually are truly limited edition. They do sell out every year. Now, it's not an urgent rush that you need to buy them now. You do have some time before they begin to sell out, but I will tell you, once sale season starts, they will begin to fully sell out, and you won't be able to get them ever again, unless sometimes they'll re-release them until the next year when there's the new collection. So no rush to buy today. However, if you are waiting for the Sephora sale to get these on a discount, you gotta rush for that one. They sell out lickety-split on Sephora. So that's the one where I'm gonna put FOMO on you. If you want them during the Sephora sale, you need to be on the website at midnight. But just the Hourglass website, you have a little bit of time, but eventually they will sell out. Did I get all of the important details? I believe so. If I didn't cover it in today's video, I covered it in yesterday's video, so I had all of those details. Let's just get into the palettes. I have the Deer palette, which we're gonna take a look. This one is intended for light skin tones. The Swan is intended for medium, and the Fox is intended for deep. Let's get into the swatch portion so that you can just get a closer look. One thing I want you to keep in mind when it comes to Hourglass swatches, the swatches don't translate the same way they do on the face. These powders are truly magical on the face, and you have a complete different experience than when you swatch. They swatch kind of weak, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know why that is, but their sheerness and how they're truly just a veil on the skin, not good for swatches. But I want you to be able to see the true colors as well as compare them to last year's palette. So in these set of swatches, I swatch each of the new palettes individually, and then I swatch the new palette compared to last year's equivalent for you. First look, all three all together. The sun is coming in from this side, so I think these are slightly darker than how they're pulling in person, but we have the Deer palette, the Swan palette, and the Fox palette. So it's that clear gradient, light, medium, dark. Though, am I crazy? The Swan palette, I mean, is not too much lighter, if lighter at all, than the Fox palette, which I'm very surprised by. Let me actually put these in the sun. This one should be a little more color accurate. Here's the Swan, here's the Fox, right? These depths are very similar, and am I crazy or do these look close? We'll see with the swatches. And then above I have last year's equivalent. So this is the Dragon palette compared to the Deer palette, the Evil Eye palette compared to the Swan palette, and the Lotus Flower palette compared to the Fox palette. And I'll show these soon in the swatches so you can get a closer look, but hopefully this helps if you needed that comparison. Now, as always with these swatches, these are in front of natural light on my iPhone camera, which I think gives the truest in-person look. So we have the Deer palette, which is easily the lightest one. For reference, there are 3 new shades and 3 existing. So the existing shades are Dreamlight, Iridescent Strobe Light, and the bronzer Diffused Bronze Light. And then the new shades are Aura Light, Radiant Peach, and Radiant Pink. So let's swatch Dreamlight, existing shade. It is a finishing powder. And then I want to see these two together, the brand new finishing powder Aura Light. These are by nature very sheer in application, but you can see the new Aura Light is more peachy. Not sure how necessary it was to have 2 finishing powders, but I will test that on the face to let you know because they're so sheer. So again, Dreamlight, Aura Light. We'll do the next existing shades, Diffused Bronze Light, which is a bronzer, and then Iridescent Strobe Light, which is their highlighter. Diffused Bronze Light, which is very, very light, you guys, wow. And then Iridescent Strobe Light. Cannot stress enough how swatches do not do Hourglass justice. Their formulas must be applied on the face. I'm building up the bronzer a bit so you can see. It kind of has more of a pinky tone, but it's not too orange, which is really nice. I know some people were worried about that. And finally, the 2 new blushes, Radiant Peach and Vibrant Pink. I think I accidentally called it Radiant Pink before. I'm excited for these blushes. I think they're very simple, classic blush shades. So there we have it. Here is this year's Deer palette, the palette for light skin. And then if you had last year's Dragon palette, the finishing powder and Dreamlight are both included in this palette. I do notice that the bronzer is more warm in the Dragon palette from last year, and the highlighter from last year is more glowy. The one this year, Iridescent Strobe Light, is more soft. The top is this year's Deer. Bottom is last year's Dragon palette. It's the same distribution of formula, so there's 2 finishing powders, bronzer, highlight, and then the 2 blushes. The bronzer and highlight are definitely the 2 biggest differences that will make the biggest differences on the face, and then this pink shade is much more vibrant. But if you bought last year's, you can make your decision based on these swatches. This year's Swan palette, upon opening up, This is definitely deeper in person than it pulls in the promo images. So that was my first initial reaction. So what we have here are 4 brand new shades and 2 repeat shades. So the 2 repeat or existing shades will be Dim Light, which is a finishing powder, and then Natural Bronze. And then these 4 are all new shades. So we have Dim Light Finishing Powder, the only finishing powder in this palette, Golden Hour Highlighter, which is a brand new highlighter, and then Natural Bronze Bronzer, of course, that existing shade. Dim Light, I love Dim Light, I'm not mad about it. It's just the universal finishing powder for me. Golden Hour, it's gonna be interesting to see that on my face. It might be too deep. And Natural Bronze, huge difference in pigmentation from that Deer palette, so definitely much more medium skin tone friendly. Let's look at all these newbies here. So we have 3 blushes in this palette. I like blushes because they make the biggest difference on the face color wise, which I do think brings up the value of the palette. So we have Luminous Coral, Sunset Flush, and Mauve Fusion, which I know a lot of you wanted to see this one. So let's get these swatched. Luminous Coral, gorgeous, gonna be a great vibrant pop of color. Sunset Flush, beautiful. This has a little bit of sheen to it. And then Mauve Fusion, which is not quite as deep or pigmented as I feel like it looked, but it's definitely gonna be buildable. This is easily a much more vibrant palette, much more saturation, much more pop than we're gonna get with the Deer palette, which surprised me how deep this is. I think this is gonna be very, very versatile for much deeper than I expected. Now comparing the Swan palette to the left, to the right, which is last year's medium skin tone friendly palette. No similar shades between the two, but the exact same number of formulas. And these are more similar than I thought. Top is Swan, bottom is Evil Eye. So finishing powder is more orange slightly and warm last year. We have more of a red tone highlighter. This year's more golden. A little bit of a deeper bronzer last year. Blushes I find to be really similar. This mauve one is the most different, but last year's had 2 similar blushes in one. Yeah, but these are closer than I thought. So if you're looking to save some money, you probably don't need the Swan this year if you bought the Evil Eye last year. There are subtle differences if you're into that, but if you're looking to save some money, these are pretty close. Next up, and the last one, we have the supposed deepest palette, the Fox palette. Now this one for collectors is the best bang for your buck because you get 5 brand new shades. This is the most out of all 3 palettes and only 1 existing shade, which would be that Lucid Glow blush. I'm gonna go a little out of order with the swatches here. I'm gonna start off with the finishing powder, which on me might be a bronzer, Desert Light. And then I'm gonna go in with the bronzer because these look similar. Bronze Fusion, both of these are new shades. And then we'll do the highlight, which feels extra creamy, Solar Glow. All of these new shades don't exist. So Desert Light finishing powder. Now this is a great finishing powder for those deeper complexions. I'm happy to see that. Bronze Fusion blush, which is pulling pretty deep. I think it could be deeper for true deep skin tones. And then Solar Glow highlight, which feels creamier than the other highlights, I have to say. And then the last 3 blushes, we'll start off with Lucid Glow, which is the boring existing one. But then we have Canyon Heat and Amethyst Haze, which these blushes, you guys, Canyon Heat and Amethyst Haze, I was so excited about. So we have Lucid Glow, Canyon Heat, sorry, so many names. Canyon Heat and Amethyst Haze. Let me build this up a little bit more. Canyon Haze is everything I was hoping it would be. I think it's going to give the prettiest toasty look on a deeper complexion. So that is the Fox palette. Okay, I was very curious about last year's Lotus palette to the right compared to this year's Fox because I feel like last year's was more deep skin tone friendly. So let's take a look at the swatches. In terms of formulations, the Lotus Flower last year had an extra highlighter and 1 less blush, but I feel like this highlighter could have been used on a blush if you were a little bit lighter. No repeat shades, but I wanted to call out last year's finishing powder in the Lotus palette was definitely deeper than this year's. Now bronzer, I feel like the bronzer in last year's in pan looked a lot darker, but swatched, they're a similar depth level, slight different undertones. So in pan, they look completely different from another, but by swatch, they're more similar. Last year's highlight was a wee bit darker, but they're similar tones. This was the other highlight in last year's palette. I just put it in the blush section for reference. Last year's blush was a little bit brighter. I like this year's blush better. And then this blush is also a little bit darker. But this is very similar to Canyon Heat. So I think Desert Flush from last year looks close to Canyon Heat this year. But Canyon Heat's a little bit more burnt orange and deep. Okay, these are closer than I thought, but I do think last year's is still a little bit more deep skin tone friendly. Okay, I did want to compare two of this year's because I was shocked. I felt like this year's Swan kind of looked a similar depth level of the Fox. I thought there would be clear differences in the depth levels, but I'm not too sure. Only the finishing powder is significantly darker here in the Fox palette, and the bronzer is a little darker, so I swatched them side by side so you can see the difference. So the top palette is the Swan palette, the bottom palette or set of swatches is the Fox palette. So finishing powder, much deeper in the Fox palette. Highlighter, definitely deeper in the Fox palette. Bronzer, similar depths. The Fox palette, slightly deeper, also slightly warmer. These are all of the blushes. This one is Canyon Heat. So this one's really unique and I think great on a deeper complexion. This one is that repeat luminous or lucid glow. This year, a little bit deeper than Sunset Flush. And I got a lot of questions about Mauve Flush versus Amethyst Haze. And they're very, very similar. But in the Fox palette, this one definitely has more depth. These are very similar palettes, but I do feel like there's been tweaks and adjustments. And I can confirm with these swatches, Fox is deeper than Swan, but they're a lot closer than I thought. But side by side, I can really see those subtle differences that will make a bigger difference on the face. Juicy, juicy stuff, right? Now we are into the demo portion of each palette. I'm actually gonna go deepest to lightest because I want to use the Fox palette as eyeshadow. So even though the Fox palette is not intended for my skin tone and by all rights should look terrible on me, for my fellow collectors, I will show you what it looks like on my skin tone. And Hourglass has one of those formulas where you can make it work for you. I will have to use this palette a little untraditionally on my skin tone and leave the wonderful creators who do have deeper complexions to test these out for real on them. But I'm just gonna show you how I can make it work on myself. Now, as far as base, I just have foundation, concealer, and I lightly set the under eyes. And right here in this area, that's it. The important thing to note with Hourglass is they are not setting powders, they are finishing powders, and I'll show you how to use them today. Now, for my fellow collectors, this is the best one in terms of not having repeats because 5 of the shades are brand new except for this one, as I previously mentioned. So I'm going to show you how I will get it to work for me. I don't really have an eye primer, just some concealer. I'm going to start off by using the Desert Light finishing powder as my crease shade today. So if you are light like me and ended up with the Fox palette in your hands, these make great eyeshadows. I use my Hourglass palettes, not just the deep ones, but all of them in the eyes all the time. They're more sheer. They're not going to have as much pigment as regular eyeshadows since they are intended for the face, of course, but you can make it work. This Desert Light shade, beautiful in the crease. Let's also use the bronzer, Bronze Fusion, in the outer corner to create more depth. Keeping it tighter than I did with Desert Light. I mean, this looks like it was intended to be eyeshadow, huh? Let's use Canyon Heat blush on the outer part of the lid to make more of a peachy eye. just as a background. We're gonna cover it pretty soon with Solar Glow Highlighter, which obviously will not work as a highlighter for me, but it is a beautiful golden eyelid shade for today's look. I apologize, I hope the eye look won't change too much of how the cheek shades look, but I really just wanted to demo this because this is how I'm using the Fox palette on the eyes. I'm just going in with a little bit more of Bronze Fusion. Okay. Very, very pretty and simple, right? Now the Fox palette should look crazy on me because this was not intended for me. If you're crazy like me and pick this up and you're around my skin tone, I'm going to show you how I make it work. Obviously, my review of the Fox palette cannot be representative of someone with a deeper complexion, so I'll leave that up to one of those creators. But I'm going to show you how I get this to work, and if it looks crazy on me, that's the way it really should be. So, to bronze, I'm going to use the powder on traditionally. We're going to use the Desert Light Finishing Powder. I think that this is a really fantastic finishing powder for deeper complexions. You don't need it to match perfectly because this is a more sheer formulation, and I use it to sheer out my cheek colors, which I'll demo in the next coming palettes. But with it being so sheared out, it actually is working out as a stunning bronzer on me. It's a little red toned. I would say it's not the best tone, but it certainly gets the job done in creating that warmth to the outer parts of my face. So thumbs up to the Desert Light Finishing Powder as a bronzer. Now, if you want a little bit more depth, again, Bronze Fusion bronzer should not work on me. I'm going to use it to chisel out my cheeks just a little bit. I'm going to use the same Rephr 5 brush, and I'm keeping it as close to the hairline as possible. Again, this is an eyeshadow for me. It is not a bronzer for me. I'm just using this to get a little extra chisel, and maybe keep it super close to the hairline. And then it looks okay. It's a little warm, obviously, to completely chisel the cheek. For that purpose, something more cool toned would suffice, but showing you how I would use it. Now for blush, I'm gonna skip out on using Lucid Glow today since that is a pre-existing shade. We're gonna focus on these two. I'm gonna take Canyon Heat, which I think this is gonna look beautiful on a deeper complexion. I'm gonna focus the shade right here. I'm using the Makeup by Mario F2 brush, which has pretty loose bristles. You know, there's not a lot of density to this, and I'm using the lightest hand possible, and you can see it's very quickly building up. And I'm keeping this tighter towards the edge because I'm gonna be a psycho and use Amethyst Haze on the apple of my cheek. But how pretty is that? And you could even make Canyon Heat. I did use it on my lid, but can kind of bleed that into the eyeshadow for a really pretty burnt, true toasty look. I'm gonna use this same brush. You can see how pretty that looks. I'm gonna add a little bit of golden hue. I'm not using it as a highlighter. It's not gonna be a highlighter on me. You see how deep that is on the eye? So the best use out of this, of my skin tone, is on the eyelid. But just to get a little bit of glow, I'm putting it not in the highlight zone. I'm blending it over top of the blush. And I do have some texture, and it is emphasizing that texture, bringing it low. My skin's messed up, but if you do have texture, you can see it is emphasizing that. I'd normally place it a little bit higher. I don't know what's going on, but that's pretty. It did deepen, which is why I didn't put it in this upper area, but it added a pretty golden hue. And if you have lovely, perfect, smooth skin without texture, how pretty is that? Almost like a makeshift NARS orgasm mix here, but that's pretty. I could make that work. Now on the apple of my cheek, this is This is where I'm going a little crazy. This is where it's not going to look right, but I do want to show it for demo's sake because this is one of the more unique blushes that Hourglass has actually put out there, though I do love this Canyon Heat even on myself. It's not going to match, but I just want to show it. So I just wiped off my brush. There's no more residue. Light, 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 light. Let's use this on the apple, but this will build up. It will. I could tell from the swatches. You're not going to have any issues. I don't know why my lace is getting scratchy. It's a little patchy on me, I'm not going to lie. This is not the best blush shade for me. I'm going to stop building it up from this point. Okay, I'm just going to blend it and see if we can diffuse it a little bit better. And a good tip, if it is looking a little uneven as it is for me because it's just too crazy and pigmented for my skin tone, that's when I would take a dim light like the one in the Swan palette. And I'd take that dim light and I'd blend everything together, and that should smooth everything out just as a veil over that. It worked. I don't love it. I don't have much use for Amethyst Haze. It's a little too cray-cray on me. Could do something cool on the eyelids with it, but I'm not really going to use that regularly. I think if you keep it more towards the back, kind of like I did with Canyon Heat, and I had reversed the two, that could have worked out better, but I really wanted to try these two for that golden warmth and show you how this looked as an apple color. So not too bad, not too shabby for it not really working with my skin tone to begin with. I utilized it for this whole look. It can be done unconventionally, but if I had gone in with any slightest bit of a heavier hand or a more dense brush like the brushes I typically use, we would have been a mess, which is a good thing. I do think this is a step backwards from last year for it being deep skin tone friendly. It will still work depending on the spectrum that you are, of course, but it's a step back, which is a little disappointing. I feel like they had the perfect opportunity with that horse palette and there being 4 palettes, but this is how it worked. If you ask me, I think this could work for deeper skin, but not deep dark. But I'll leave that to those creators. This is how it worked on me. Swan palette is next. I really wanted to get this one side by side with the Fox palette, mostly because of this mauve fusion. I wanted to see both of these, but I was interested in comparing these two. Now the finishing powder dim light is pretty spot on with my normal skin tone. Dim light is one of the most popular finishing powders from Hourglass, so they are in so many palettes, and genuinely, they could put dim light in every palette and I would not be upset because dim light is the perfect all over veil slash filter for my face. So I'll show you how I use that. But let's just use this palette as I normally would as someone with a light skin tone. Though looking at this in the swatches, this will absolutely work even better for medium skin tones. I thought this one would be for my skin tone, but I don't know. Deer might work out better for me. But let's see how natural bronze is. This is an existing bronzer. Again, using my Rephr 5 brush. However, I did clean it off in between takes. Actually, this is making the finishing powder from Fox look a little bit more orange. This isn't too orange, you guys. I know we were worried that Hourglass would make the bronzers too warm, but I feel like they're perfect bronzers. They're cooler than last year's, but still actually bronze. Though I would love to see like a cool toned, like almost sculpting one from them. I mean, this is beautiful. I actually really love this bronzer. It could definitely go deeper if I were to build it up and use a more dense hand. But this is how it looks on me. I'm going to build it up actually, just so you can see. This can be built up. Oh, 100%. I just know I'm of a lighter skin tone. Yeah. Beautiful. Smooth application. Come closer. Love. Seeing, I feel like a little bit of glitter actually in Luminous Coral. These are all 3 new blushes. I'm gonna see if I can do a little bit of a gradient effect because I have 1 cheek and 3 shades. You know what, actually, I'm gonna save Luminous Coral for the next demo because I'll have a full free face. So this is out until we get to the Deer palette demo since there's only 2 blushes in that. So we'll just demo these 2 instead, which I'm excited about. So I'm gonna use this shade first. This is another very popular blush that people were curious about, Mauve Fusion. And you saw in the swatches, it is completely different than Amethyst Haze, this cheek color. It's lighter. So by completely different, I mean, it's gonna give a similar effect, but this is more lighter skin tone friendly. Oh yeah, 100%. Look at this flush that Mauve Fusion is giving. It's like I just went for a run kind of flush, which is really natural, and it's not overwhelming and sticking to one patch because it was too dark for me. Beautiful application, and this is sheared out. I'm using a light hand, but again, if I didn't use a light hand, you could definitely build this up and it would absolutely work for medium complexions. I'll build it up just a little bit more towards the back. Again, Mauve Fusion. Actually so stunning. This is a beautiful berry color for the winter time. Ooh, I really, really like this color. This is obviously the more light medium skin tone friendly version of this shade. And I like that we have both because this is not a typical kind of blush that Hourglass would do. And then not because it matches, but because I want to show you, we're gonna take Sunset Flush. I'm gonna use a little bit of the bigger, denser side for this because I'm less scared. Yeah, and that does have that Orgasm from NARS peachy golden shift all on its own, which is kind of what we created back here, but less toasty and an all-in-one step. That's pretty. I'm gonna use the other side just so you can see the color a bit more. I wouldn't normally take it this far up. That's so beautiful, and this is gonna bleed beautifully into the golden hour highlight. And I don't know about this highlight working on my skin tone, but let's see. Okay, it definitely looks deeper in pan. Oh yeah, it looks deeper in pan than it does on application. That is stunning. Okay, let's see. Not really a cast. It's bordering the edge on my light skin tone. So if you're even a hair deeper or more tan than me, this will be just fine on you, and I can just feather it out and it works just fine. I really like this palette so far. Final thing, let me show you how I use dim light. I'm gonna take a big fluffy brush. This is the Snake brush from last year. I do love me an Hourglass brush, and I'm just gonna keep it in this corner. I'm gonna use this to blend all of these shades together. This is how I personally use my finishing powders. I'll use Dreamlight that's in the Deer palette as a highlight to demo for you, but it just made the makeup look smoother. It made everything on the cheek look more cohesive, so you'll never have that, you know, white highlight, pink blush, brown bronzer with this. This marries your cheek colors together, and it just makes the skin have a natural, almost bridal-like filter. So you'll notice if you do try this method when you go outside in the sun, it is a literal sheer veil over the skin. That's the best way to describe it. That's why I keep describing it that way, and it just makes everything blend more cohesively. It's also a good way to get some powder on the face for longevity without compromising the natural glow that you will get from your bronzer. So you can put it all over, but I do like to use this to diffuse all of my cheek colors together to make them look like one. I'll show you here on this side where it's looking a little splotchy. Not bad, but just kind of marries everything together and instantly just made the cheek look better. It's subtle. It may not be able to be seen on camera, but I know I've told you guys how to use this, and you've told me that it's made the biggest difference. It's just subtle though. It's not really for photography. It's for real life. So here is how the Swan palette looks on me. Again, we'll use Luminous Coral in the next demo since I'll have the cheek space for it. But with these two blushes and these three, I really like it. And this one is so glowy, Sunset Flush. So do keep that in mind if you don't like a glowy blush. That one has True Reflect in there. Then a quick look again at Fox with the Dim Light finishing powder over top from the Swan palette. Let me refresh. All right, so I've left Swan on this side in case you wanted to compare the bronzers side to side against the face, but I'll eventually end up taking this off. But we'll do what we can with the Dear palette, which is targeted more towards the fair to light skin tone family, and I think this is gonna work pretty well on me. So I want to start off with the 2 finishing powders. I don't like when there's 2 finishing powders in a palette because I feel like it's just a waste of real estate. But for Dreamlight, which is the existing finishing powder, I do, on my skin tone, use this as a little bit of a brightener slash highlighter. Obviously, if you're lighter than me, it becomes more how dim light is to me. And then Aura Light here is a new finishing powder, which is a little peachy. So I'm going to play around with that just to familiarize myself with it. But I do want to show you how I use Dreamlight on my skin tone. And you can see it slightly brightens the area. I wouldn't call it a highlighter by any means on me, but it gives a little bit of brightness. And if you build it up, it gives a super duper subtle glow to the cheek. And I mean really subtle. You could also mix it with whatever highlighters in the palette to dim it down a bit. So if you feel like your highlighter is just a bit too shiny or glowy for what you're going for, I recommend mixing those 2 formulas just to soften that glow. But I also really like Dreamlight, maybe not in the center of the forehead, because you see when you really concentrate it, it does emphasize some of the lines here, but in the outer parts of the face, it is really nice to brighten. But if you do use a bigger brush, you can still do what I did with dim light. That really shears it out. But with Dreamlight being on the lighter side, I do like to make it more concentrated to brighten in areas like this. Now, I'm curious, let me wipe my brush off. Normally, I'm not using the finishing powders first, but I just need to see how this Aura Light looks. It looks the same, like it's just not different enough. I don't use this as a setting powder. I've already gone through and set with a matte powder, but let me try this all over. This is me being the reviewer. I just don't think it was necessary to have both. So that to me is a little bit of a waste of real estate, but this is pretty just to make the skin not as flat. So if you have a matte foundation and you go in with a finishing powder like this, it will give a little bit more life to the skin. And then if you have a glowy base already and you use this, it will set the makeup, help with longevity without taking away the glow. Okay. These 2 do the same function if you ask me. You saw in the swatches, Aura Light does have that more peachy tone to it, but to me, it was a bit unnecessary. Anyways, let's see how diffused bronze light is. I think for my fair girls, you guys were concerned that this was gonna be too warm. I think in the swatch, it looked a little bit more pinky, not too orange. And you can see the difference from the Swan. That's why I left the Swan on. For my skin tone, it's gonna take a little bit of building up. It's very, very natural on my skin tone. But I don't think this is too orange. Now, you guys can be the judge of that because this does already exist. So if you're very fair and you've used diffused bronze light, please let me know. But I do feel like this is slightly pinker slash cooler in tone. And I'm building it up. That's the beauty with Hourglass powders. Can be built up very easily. But by the way, I do completely clean my brushes with brush cleaner in between these takes. So there's no residual powder. But that is how diffused bronze light works for me. I like this for like a lighter day if I'm wearing more natural makeup, or sometimes I use foundations that are too light for me. That's when I would reach for this. Or if I just want it really subtle, I would say the bronzer in Swan is a little bit more quick, that I can apply it and have the bronze right away. This one might need build up, but works for me. I think it's beautiful. So now I'm going to use Radiant Peach Blush. I'm going to use this Hourglass brush because we've already done the top 3. And again, this palette is much more safe zone. This palette is much more of a safe zone for me so I can be heavy-handed. I don't have to think so much about which brushes to use because you can see I'm even building this up. How pretty is this Radiant Peach? I really like, I know Hourglass is known for their marbling shades, but there's something that's just so smooth about the blushes that have that finish without the marbling. Like, look at that. And I think with the buildup of the finishing powders underneath, it's made it even more of a radiant blush as well. So it is cool to layer with those finishing powders. But this is beautiful. Let's use the highlight, which is less glowy, especially than the highlight in the Swan palette. But, oh yeah, that's going to be great on somebody more fair. It's more of a satin highlighter, but it gives that almost glow from within. Really pretty for bridal. If you're more on the fair side, it works for me, but it did streak on just a hint white. But that's okay, because if I sheer it out, that's a stunning natural highlighter, especially if you are lighter than me. And even then, like, that's pretty on me too. Ooh, I really like this. I would say if you're my skin tone, I'm truly in between the deer and the swan. Swan is like a little bit more, you can throw it on and you have the pigment right away for me. And then this deer palette, it's a little bit more building and blending, but you can get there as well and it will still look really, really beautiful. I really like that highlight. I'm excited for my fair girls because it's really, really light, you guys. I don't think you're gonna have a cast with that. Still putting on Radiant Peach. You can see the complete difference between Swan on me versus Deer. This is more angelic on my skin, a little bit more brightening and soft. So I do appreciate this look as well. I'm gonna take off Swan now and we'll match it up and then play with the blushes. All right, let's build up this bronzer. This time I don't have any finishing powder on. So this is just my blank slate because I want to do the finishing powder over top on this side. You see how I really have to build up the bronzer here, but it's doable. But I do think the bronzer is just quicker for me in the Swan palette. Beautiful. I want to do the highlight first this time. We'll just do it a little bit different. This is that iridescent strobe light that does already exist. It's not a new highlight. That's pretty underneath. I think it's going to be pretty underneath my blush. I am going to throw on Luminous Coral from the Swan palette here too. But first, I need to see this Radiant Pink. I'm really excited for this. I think it's going to be beautiful. I wanted to give this its whole cheek first. And I'm using a pretty dense brush. This is the Evil Eye brush from last year. And it's not crazy pigmented. So even though it looks really vibrant in the pan, it's a buildable blush. So for fair skin, this is so perfect for you. And I think it's so pretty on top of that highlight. And this blush is brand new to Hourglass. And I think it's so pretty. They do have a lot of pinks, but they're all a little bit on the warmer side. Not that this is cool toned, but it's more of that trendy, vibrant kind of pink. How pretty is that? I love that blush. Okay, I'm also with the same brush gonna take, this is gonna be pretty vibrant, but this is that new blush shade, Luminous Coral from the Swan palette. I'm gonna put it back here just so you can see. You can get it very vibrant with this. This is truly for medium skin tones, the Swan palette. Yeah, that made it much more poppy. Cleaning off the brush, actually I'm gonna use the other end. I just dipped it into a little bit more vibrant pink from the Deer palette, but these two bleed in really well together. Then using my big fluffer, I'm gonna go into Aura Light. Just really get in there. Honestly, I'm just gonna mix these two together, it doesn't matter. They're like the same thing. And we're gonna give everything that finishing touch. Melt the bronzers in, well, bronzer. Melt the blushes in. And these finishing powders are beautiful if you wanted to mix them in with blushes as well to soften them. Very, very pretty. Minus the Luminous Coral, overall, The Deer palette's much more bright and fresh looking on me. And those are all of the swatches and demos of this year's Hourglass Holiday 2025 palettes. Now I have decided against purchasing the Horse palette because I already own all of the shades in that palette, but it is a very pretty palette if you are not a crazy collector like me. If this is your first time purchasing an Hourglass palette and you really enjoy the color story of the Horse palette, go ahead, pick it up. You're not gonna miss out on anything because the formula is so stunning. These are the best powders on the market, if you ask me. I mean, look how good my skin looks. So my review on these on my skin tone, again, I'm light with a neutral undertone. The Deer palette is very clearly going to be the best for fair skin tones. It works very good on my light skin tone as well. I would say this is more for fair to light. If you have like a light medium, especially medium complexion, it's when it gets harder to be able to make the most out of this palette. So I would say this sticks for more fair to light skin tones, works on me. Swan palette also works really well on me also, especially in the summertime if I were to have more of a tan. This would be the ideal palette for me. Right now, where I don't have much of a tan, I'm kind of in between the Deer and the Swan. For this one, I would say this works best for light, medium to medium complexions. And originally, I was worried when it came to medium complexions, like how deep on this scale do you have to be? I thought this could only work maybe for the lighter side of medium, but these shades build up. So pretty good. This has a lot more depth than I thought. And I like the different blushes a lot in this Swan palette. I really love the two blushes, by the way, in the Deer palette. I just don't like that there's two finishing powders. That was kind of a waste for me. But this one is also very beautiful. Definitely ideal for medium. And then the Fox palette, it does work for me. It made beautiful eyeshadows, but it doesn't work perfectly on the face for me, as it should be that way. So keep an eye out for more reviews on this Fox palette. So I hope you got all you needed from this review and that I helped you out. As always, all of the links to pick these palettes up will be down below, as well as discount codes to save 10% off that I found off in the back end. And thanks to you guys for sharing it. I hope you have a good day. Let me know if you picked any of these up. What combo did you get? Which artwork case did you get? With what color story? I'd love to hear it. You guys should be getting yours in the mail soon. Make sure you stay tuned as I start to see throughout the season these go on sale from whichever retailers. I will let you guys know, so make sure you have my notification bell on because I let you guys know in my community tab. And with that being said, have a great day. Thank you so much for sticking with me through all this Hourglass content. If you have any more questions, don't be afraid to ask in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later. Bye guys.
It's delicious.